Okay, the first thing I want you to do when you get your plywood is to determine the good face and the bad face. The bad face is definitely having these little chip outs and areas that are kind of chipped out, and that was when I cut this plywood, the blade came around and chipped out at the bottom. So I always try to have the good face on the top. Definitely mark the good face, a couple X's there, real simple. That'll always be our good face. And so once you find your bad face, take your sanding block that I made for you and wrap your sandpaper around it and just lightly hit those corners so that way we don't have any of those chips. We don't want any of that flying around. So just lightly hit the corners, the back edge corners real quick so they're not so sharp and you don't get any splinters. So we'll hit that. Okay? You might even hit the ends a little bit if it chips out at the end. Let's take a look at this other end. No, it looks pretty good, but there's definitely some chip out right here. I'm just getting the corners real fast and making sure I don't have anything there. Now, I'm going to pretend, this is your sanding block. We're going to go ahead and do a few test cases on the sanding block first. So I'm going to mark an X on the good face because it's going to be really come in handy here. And I'm going to take some of my banding here and I'm going to have it hang over. We're always going to do the shorter ends first, the shorter ends of your boards first. So take some banding, make sure that you kind of mark and have some hanging over on each end here so we're not so short. I'm just going to put a little mark there. I'm going to take a pair of scissors. This is easy enough for scissors to cut. And just cut that. Okay, I'll go ahead and cut two while I'm at it, just so I have another one, because I'm going to do the other end too, just to practice, okay? There should be enough banding for you to practice on your little sanding block, okay? Now we're going to go ahead and just use an iron, but I have a special, just like a special mini iron for banding. It's not that big of a deal. If you can find a way to prop your piece up in a position that's in a up position, that's so much nicer. So I'm just going to use my vise. I know you might not have one at home, but maybe you can construct something or have something hold your piece so you don't have to sit there and hold it while you're banding it. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the banding. And I would say on your iron, I would say cotton setting or wool, kind of a high setting here. Now remember the X we made here? The X is on this face here. Okay? I'm going to hold this piece of banding as flush as I can along the X side. So let me show you here real quick in the video. Here's my X. The banding is as flush as I can make it here. So I don't want to have to do a whole lot of work on top. I want to do more of the work on the bottom. It is going to be wider than it needs to be for the piece of wood. It's made that way. So we need to come up with the right heat setting. That's why I'm doing a little practice here. If this is not hot enough on your iron, then you might want to get a different setting on the iron. So you just kind of rub that back and forth. That glue will heat up here. If it's starting to burn, you might want to take a light cloth and hold it over there and then put your iron and just iron on top of that. But you really want to make sure you got a good seal on there. So go back and forth, make sure you're going all the way down across there. And mine was moving, so I moved it over a little bit. So if it moves, just kind of move it back while it's still hot and get that nice and situated. Then what I would do is I would take some kind of piece of wood or some other piece of wood and I would rub it down like this. Later on you can use your sanding block, but since we're using the sanding block right now we can't do it. So I'm just taking another piece of wood, I'm just kind of rubbing that down and getting that glue set there. I held it pretty flush on the top here on the X side. Definitely have some hangover on the bad side. You can almost see that. And then just lift it. See if you got a nice seal all the way around here. Let's see how I did. So if we're looking here, I shouldn't be able to lift it up off the wood. Looking pretty good. Not lifting off the wood. Not lifting off the wood. Cool. So this is where your straight edge comes in. Get some help if you are not really good with sharp things. But we want to make sure, we got to score this a little bit to be able to break it. So I'm taking my razor blade, and this is your utility knife, or maybe X-Acto knife, or something of that nature. But I need to score this right along the edge here. So I'm scoring that. It should break pretty easily. Okay, boom, broke pretty easily. Let's flip it around. Let's score the end here. Do that a couple times. See if that breaks easily. Okay, it does. Now, this is the one I'm concerned about. I haven't tried this yet, so I'm going to score along this edge here. So score. And we used to have this little gizmo here. Well, we do have one of these gizmos. I can't send one home, and what it does, it is the banding goes in here, and you squeeze it tight, and then there's little razor blades in there, and it trims off the banding for you. But I think this will work. So let's go ahead and score that. Make sure your razor blade is sharp. Utility knives aren't that expensive at Home Depot or Lowe's. Okay, so then what we need to do is we need to take our sanding block and go ahead, and since we're doing it on the sanding block, I guess you can do it by hand, but I do have an extra sanding block here, and maybe you have a block of wood. And we just need to sand that veneer so it's flush. I still feel a little bit sticking up here. So I'm just going to sand it just real lightly. I'm trying not to cross the grain here, so I'm just getting the corner here. And you can see there, it's not quite flush right about there. Not quite flush right there. So I'm just going to take my sandpaper, almost there, boom, looks great. Let's get the other side. This is the X side now. I didn't hang it over very much, so it should be easier. Just sand that veneer, just hit the corner until you can't feel it with your finger. And then also hit these ends if they're hanging over at all. Looking really good. All right, so do both ends, score all those out, cut them all out, get the both ends done, and then we do across the top here, and that hides this end grain here, this little end grain of the veneer. That's going to hide that at the end, and so we'll finish it off here. So I'm going to go get this one done here, and I'll show you what I got. So when we're all done, it should be banded all the way around. And it should look pretty nice. And it really hides this nasty looking plywood here, which doesn't look nice. And it should make our desk look really beautiful. If it starts to come up again, just reheat it and reseal it. And hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully you do your job right. But get that banded all the way around. So on this piece here, this long drawer front, definitely mark your X on the best face. Keep everything flush with that face as much as possible. Do your short ends first and then do your long ends, both short ends. On your longer board for your desk, do your short ends first, then your longer ones. Don't forget to get all these fuzzies out of here. Do you see I have quite a bit of fuzzies on the bottom edge there? Sand those first, of course, just like I showed you. Get those sanded and then band those up all the way around. And then you go ahead and sand the whole top down and get that sanded nice and smooth. When you sand your face here of this, be aware that the grain is going this way, not the long way. So you have to go this way when you sand it, and be very careful when you sand it. As a matter of fact, you might just go ahead and hold off sanding this until maybe we can get a power sander to you, because I really don't, if you sand this way, the banding is going to maybe come off, and we don't want that to happen. So we want to be careful here. So we might wait for a power sander. So just get as close as you can to the face here, and then we'll try to get a power sander to you, or find a different way to maybe sand this so it's taken care of. So get everything banded and ready to go so we can go on to the next step on your desk.